Hey guys, this is Ms. Benson, and today we're going to talk about our very first econ model called the circular flow model. Now I'm so excited to be able to show you this model. It's our very first picture, and so it's definitely going to be simplified, but it's super important because it really acts as the blueprint for both micro and macroeconomics. So first off, our circular flow model is going to be in the shape of a circle, as the name implies. And what the circular flow model shows is basically how our economy is organized. Now you have a few key players in the economy that keep things running. First off, you're going to have households. Households are what you typically think of like you and me. We're people that go to work, we're people that go to the store and buy things. So when you think about households, really just think about consumers. Think about people going to the store, going to work, living their average everyday lives. Then we have firms or businesses. Firms or businesses are another key player in the economy. They're going to be the ones that are making the products, they're producing the finished goods and services, and they're also the ones that are employing us, right? They're the ones that are hiring people because they need workers to make those goods and services. Another key player in the economy, of course, is going to be the government. Now, of course, we'll talk more about the roles of government in the macro side, but we will touch on parts of that in the micro side as well. Now, as you can imagine, the government's probably all in the middle of the circle, right? That's exactly where the government's going to be on our circular flow model. Now let's talk about how these key entities interact with each other within the circular flow model to keep the economy going. First off, households and firms are going to interact with each other in two main types of markets. First, let's talk about the product market. Now in the product market, this is where finished products are going to be exchanged. So finished goods, finished services, this is when you go to the store and you pay people for a finished product, or you're paying someone for a finished service like a taxi ride. So think about finished products, finished goods and services being exchanged in the product market. Now, in the product market, businesses are the sellers. They're the ones that are selling those finished goods and services. So they're selling the finished products, and households are the buyers. So households are the buyers in the product market. Now, it's easy to understand this because this is exactly what happens when we go to the store and buy something. Now, when we go to the store and we buy something, we don't just take it out of the store, we have to pay for it, right? So whenever we are spending some of our household money, that counts as revenue towards the business. So the money that we're spending on these finished products in the product market, and the product market can be anything where you buy a product like Walmart or the mall or online even. Whenever we're spending this money as consumers, that is going in exchange towards businesses in the form of revenue. Now, since businesses are making these finished products, they need resources. I mean, they can't make products out of nothing. They can't make goods and services out of thin air. They need workers. They need tools. And so the second market is the resource market. So the thing that trips students up the most about the resource market is that the tables are turned, and it seems kind of weird, but businesses are the buyers. They actually have to buy and pay for the labor and the natural resources and the tools to be able to make the finished products. So businesses are buying these resources from households. Households are selling natural resources. Households are selling their labor. I know it seems weird, but when you go to work, you're actually selling your labor. You've agreed to work for a specific price. Now, speaking of the resource market, let's talk about 4 categories of resources, sometimes called the 4 factors of production. Usually, you need an element from each one of these categories to go into the production of a good or service. First off, there's land. Now, land is pretty easy to understand. If you think about any good or service, you can probably think about some element of natural resources. So land is anything that comes from nature. Maybe it's water, maybe it's trees, maybe it's oil, maybe it's petroleum. Any number of things. As long as it comes from nature, it's considered in the land category. There's also labor. Labor is people who are working. So you might have all the abundant land and natural resources that you could possibly have, but unless there's somebody that's actually doing something, no finished products are going to get created. So you need to have some workers, so you need to have labor. The third factor of production is capital. Now, big disclaimer here. When we say capital in economics, we definitely do not mean money. We are talking about two things: physical capital and human capital. Physical capital refers to buildings and tools and any of the equipment that you may use whenever you're producing a good or providing a service. So the physical capital for a taxi driver might be the cab. Or the physical capital for a doctor might be any of the instruments they use to diagnose some of your symptoms and to diagnose your illnesses, x-ray machines, MRIs. You may even have a job right now and use specific tools and equipment. If you are a chef, there are specific tools and equipment that you use to help perform your job as well. Those tools and those buildings and those equipment, that's known as physical capital. Human capital is the knowledge and the skills and the know-how. And this is a lot of times can make a big difference in the outcome of the finished product, the good or service. If you have somebody who's been working in this field for a long time, they have tons of experience, they just have gained a lot of knowledge, maybe they have license and certifications in certain things, that's going to make them a much more productive and effective worker than someone who's a newbie. Finally, our fourth factor of production seems like the oddball out, but it's called entrepreneurship. And basically, this refers to the people who are visionaries, the people who come up with ideas for new products and new services, and they really tie all the factors of production together. So they have the idea for this finished product, and they bring together the land, the labor, the physical, and the human capital, and manifest it into a finished product. Now, in the resource market, when households are selling their resources to the businesses, they are making money. Businesses are spending money on workers, and that's called cost. You know, businesses, they have to pay for their workers, they have to pay for their tools, they have to pay for their resources. So those are considered cost. Those expenditures are called cost by businesses. And whenever your employer is paying you, that counts as your income towards your household. So remember, households and firms interact in two key markets: the product market, where finished products are exchanged, and the resource market. Sometimes it's called the factor market. Let's talk very briefly about the government's part in the middle. The government can also buy things from the product market. The government can buy school buses. The government can buy any kind of finished goods or services. And so the government does make purchases from the product market, but they also spend some of the government money on that. So the government has government spending going on as well in the product market. Also, the government hires some workers. If you think about teachers, if you think about firefighters, if you think about police officers, these are all people that are hired by the government. So in the resource market, the government does hire workers and spends money on their salaries as well. Now, where does the government get some of its money from to spend on these things? Well, sadly, you know the truth. They get most of their money from taxes. The government collects taxes, sales taxes, income taxes, corporate income taxes, from both households and firms. But they do give back. Sometimes households can be eligible to receive something called transfer payments. If you've ever heard of people receiving Social Security benefits, disability benefits, welfare benefits, unemployment benefits, these are things that people are eligible to receive from the government, assistance that people are eligible to receive from the government if they meet certain requirements, and they don't have to pay this money back. Why don't I have to pay this money back? It's already paid for by people's taxes. So households can receive transfer payments if they meet eligibility requirements. Sometimes businesses can receive subsidies. A subsidy is always a good thing. A subsidy is whenever the government gives money or a tax break to something that they want to encourage. So a lot of times the government will give small businesses a tax break because they want to encourage people to open up their own small businesses. Or they might give farmers some subsidies, some money or some kind of financial break just to help encourage the agricultural industry in our country. Also, don't forget, some of that tax money that we're paying is going towards our public goods, things like bridges, fixing our roads, things like our police officers and our firefighters and our public education, and all these things that we collectively do benefit from. So this is the big picture. This is a blueprint for our course that we're going to keep coming back to, and hopefully it makes sense to you.